Hi guys, and welcome back to my cave. I've got a 3D printer and I don't want to spend a bunch of money on some specialized leatherworking tools. I've already got a video with 5 different things you can print up there for you, but in this video I want to show you 5 more things, including 2 that you can use whether you're doing leatherwork or anything else in your shop. Obviously, the first thing on my list is going to be a sharp knife. This is something that any crafter absolutely needs in their shop, and I do sincerely believe a box cutter will fulfill most of your needs. They are inexpensive, you can find them everywhere, and if you're changing the blade on a frequent basis, then it is technically always sharp. So I've gone ahead and printed out a ton of box cutters which take the regular box cutting blades, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, so you can definitely find one that fits your need. This one, for example, is nice and beefy. It fits well in my hand and definitely gives me a lot of strength when cutting something thick. It's nice, it's comfortable, it's easy to change the blade inside there. As you can see, it's just got one simple little M3 bolt and nut on the back, or vice versa, whatever, you get it. It's a great tool and you can change the blade really quickly. It also comes in this much slimmer version, which is insane if you need to like scooch up on the blade, use it like a pencil grip and go ahead and do those very small cuts. It really does work well for that. My next knife is this one, which is very similar. It comes with a little sheath, which is nice and cool to have because it does protect the blade. It means you're not going to have the blade hitting anything when you're not using it. And what I like about this one is that you can once more scooch up on that blade and use it as a skiver, which I will show you right now. It's got a nice comfortable cutout for your fingers here, which makes it nice and easy to hold. And yeah, it's a good versatile all-rounder. As you can see, in a pinch, it really does a great job at skiving down material, and in fact most of these will do as well because they are very thin. You can get a nice angle on your leather. Now, skiving will always require lots of technique and learning how to do it properly, but you can actually achieve great results with these knives. The next knife I want to show you is much more fun, and it's this one. It is inspired from like survival knives, and it's got these holes on the handle to make it look nice and light and really cool and funky. And it's got this wonderful bulky sheath which has a sort of locking mechanism. Now, it's actually pretty hard to take out, and I'm always a bit scared of cutting myself. There we go. With that blade, which you can see is nice and exposed out there. So it's a good comfy knife and gives you plenty of access to the blade. You can hold it in different ways. You can have your thumb up here to have lots of pressure and all that. It's a fun one, it's a fun one. It's definitely requires a bit more assembly with quite a few different bolts in the sheath part here. But yeah, while it's not the one I'd recommend you print, it's a fun print to have if you want that kind of style. And the last knife I want to show you is this one, which has a really cool ergonomic handle. Now, I've printed this was the original one at 100% in PETG CF, and this is the ultimate version I printed, which is in PA6 CF. So I chose PA6 because I wanted some really rigid, hard material. Now, one thing to note about this specific design is that you have to print it at 102 or 104% scale because it is slightly snug on the blade. What this design gives you is a very comfortable handle to be able to hold that knife in quite a few different ways. You can hold it like a pen if you wanted to, like this. That does technically work. Or you could hold it like this, and with your finger in the finger hole, you get a lot of grip, a lot of control. That knife is going nowhere, and you really can put a lot of strength in your cut without risking hurting yourself, which is always very important. This knife also comes with its own little sheath, which has 2 compartments for magnets, so you can just slide it on. I don't have it right now, but in theory you can just slide on the sheath and the magnets will click together nice and satisfying. And yeah, that's cool if you like it. I don't use that, so I didn't print it. Quick note before we move on, all of these 3D prints are free throughout the whole video. So if you have any needs for them, go ahead and check them in the description down below. All the links are there. Again, they're free to print, so go ahead and grab them now. My next tool for you is a belt hole punch jig, finder, center, aligner, whatever you want to call it. And it's one of those tools I was dubious about. I didn't think I'd need it until I had it. Until now, I've been using this jig with markings all along, but it can be a bit fiddly getting the belt nice and straight within those lines to be able to mark out your holes. So when I printed this thing out, I suddenly realized how useful it is because it will automatically adjust to the size of whatever belt or lanyard you're working with, and you'll be able to mark out those holes. Now, the sizes go from very, very wide to much less wide, so presumably it's going to work for nearly, I'd say 95 to 99% of your pieces, of your belts out there, and it's really changed the game for me in terms of marking out holes. With this, I am sure to be always wonderfully center. I am sure that my holes are always perfectly lined up and at the same distance from each other, and it gives me a satisfying and quick result that will always look good. The next tool in this video is another jig, and this time it is an edge beveler sharpener. Now, if you have an edge beveler, you'll ultimately start wondering, how do you make sure that blade stays really sharp? It's often got a weird angle, a very small radius angle to it on the inside and stuff like that. It's just an odd, very specialized tool, which can be hard to sharpen. With this jig, all you have to do is place a piece of very soft sandpaper, very high grit sandpaper on the top of the tool and run your edge beveler across it to make sure that edge inside there is always wonderfully polished and sharp. A sharp edge beveler is essential. It will give you a great cut every single time. It will mean you're not pushing as much into that cut, which means that you've got more control and it will be easier on your wrist ultimately. And finally, it will give you a nice rounded edge, meaning that your burnishing afterwards will be better. But it's not just about looks, because a proper edge and a good burnish will actually help that edge stay nice and clean much longer in time. It really helps with the durability of your edge. So having a tool like this will not only make your work much easier, but also help it last much longer. Okay, so what if I said you could 3D print a Dremel? Well, no, you can't, but yeah, it would be cool, probably very dangerous, but it would be very cool. Instead, you can 3D print a Dremel Holder, which is not cool at all, but so useful. So a Dremel is actually one of those typically non-leatherworking tools, which I think is essential for a leatherworker. They are relatively inexpensive, all things considered, and they really can help you out do a lot of things. The first thing I use it for is to make sure all my edges are nice and flush, and then I can burnish it using different burnishing attachment wheels. Having one of these means that I can now clamp it down into a vise, and I have a static Dremel to do my work. This means I now have both hands available to help guide my piece as I'm working. It means that I can be much more precise, much more accurate, and that also means much faster. So ultimately, while this is not a sexy tool to have in your shop, I definitely do believe if you have a Dremel, you need one of these. Now, second quick tip in this video, I've been using PETG CF and PA6 CF, which are two really awkward materials to work with. They're awkward because these are materials that will absorb in any of the ambient humidity, and I work in a humid area, which doesn't have the best ventilation. Humidity in your filament can cause stringing, it can cause issues of layer adhesion, as I just mentioned, and it can basically ruin your prints outright. Now, full disclosure, Polymaker did send over this poly dryer kit for free for me to test and see if I liked it or not, but whatever I say next is completely up to me. They're not paying me, they're not influencing me in any shape or form. This kit is really interesting. It has one dry element and a dry box, which also contains some silica gel and a hygrometer inside in a very clever little system. It's a great little package and works phenomenally well for me. I don't have much space and I don't use much filament, so it's nice to be able to store the filaments in a dry container that I know will stay dry for a very long time. All I need to do is open up the small air vents at the bottom of each container, check the system guide settings that I need for each filament on the poly dryer system, set those settings into the system, and off I go, starting to dry my filament. It works by pushing hot air through and around that container, that dry box, and when the hot air comes back out, it will suddenly cool down and any moisture will be just pulled away from that hot air. Since implementing the Polymaker Poly Dryer Box system into my printing, I have had no issues with print and humidity. Absolutely none. It's completely fixed any issues I was having, especially working with really tough materials. Like I mentioned, PETG CF when I need a bit more structural rigidity, and PA6 CF when I really need something as sturdy as possible. So if you are having issues with your prints not coming out the way you like, or if you're like me and work in a humid environment, this is definitely a very interesting system. It's quite affordable, all things considered, and it means that you will be keeping your filament dry for a very, very long time. So you've got a 3D printer. You can in theory print any shape you want. Why not print that shape onto leather? Well, you can't really, but you can print something like this. It's a wet mold, and I'm not talking about the damp fuzzy stuff. You should really get that checked out. I'm talking about something that you use to be able to mold wet leather into specific shapes. If you're new to leatherwork, wet molding is a very old technique where you're wetting your leather and using a mold to press that leather together, to compress those fibers together in a very specific shape. You'll then let the whole thing sit and dry, and it will come out with that specific shape you had. For example, making this specific little tray took me about 5 minutes, not counting the time it took to dry. Now I've still got a lot of work making sure the edges are nice and flat, making sure they are beveled and burnished properly, but all in all, I have got something very usable in a very short amount of time. And as I mentioned, you have a 3D printer. You can print it in any shape and size you want, theoretically. You can make very small round ones, you can make medium size, rectangular ones like this, or you can make much more complex shapes. Your imagination is basically the limit of what you can do in this one. So there you have it, guys. Those are 5 more 3D printed recommendations that you will find useful in your leatherworking shop. If you have any questions for me or suggestions as to what I might want to print next, I would love to read them in the comments down below. As always, thanks a ton for joining me today, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've learned something, and I hope to see you very soon for some more crafting.